My name is Emily Lawson, and I'm a scientist with the Kentucky Division of Mine Reclamation and Enforcement. We're part of Department for Natural Resources under the Energy and Environment Cabinet. And today I'm going to provide you an overview of DMRE and introduce some online resources that may be useful for you in your watershed projects. Let's see. First, let me begin with our mission statement. So DMRE's mission statement is that through inspection and enforcement activities, the Kentucky Division of Mine Reclamation and Enforcement ensures that the extraction of our natural resources is conducted in an environmentally conscientious manner that protects the citizens of the Commonwealth. DMRE is responsible for implementing the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act, or SMCRA, of 1977, as it applies to coal mining. We're also responsible for the permitting and regulation in non-coal mining, as well as licensing, training, inspection, and enforcement of blasting and explosives across the state. So basically, what does DMRE do? And as I said in the mission statement, we have the coal program, which most folks are probably familiar with. We also have the non-coal program, which is the permitting and regulation of all non-coal mining in the state. And we have an explosives and blasting program. I'm going to begin with the coal program. I'll talk about most in depth here. DMRE works closely with 5 other agencies and DNR. One of those is Division of Mine Permits, then also Division of Abandoned Mine Lands, and then the Office of the Reclamation Guarantee Fund. We have 4 regional offices and a central office in Frankfort. Here's where all our offices are located. We have a Pikeville branch, Hazard, Middlesboro, and Madisonville. And then our central office is on Sauer Boulevard in Frankfort. So our primary focus is inspection and enforcement of coal mining. We are inspecting these jobs to ensure compliance with the actual mine permit that was issued to this entity. Those are reviewed and issued by the Division of Mine Permits, not by DMRE. DMRE also enforces Chapter 405 KR and Chapter 350 KRS. And enforcement will continue until the job is completely reclaimed, released from our program. And I'll talk more about that process in the upcoming slides. And across the state, we currently have almost 1,400 inspectable units. This graph here is demonstrating kind of the current state of the industry. So you see here, all of our permits, they are assigned a mine status, depending on what stage they're at on the job. So AP, the royal blue color there, that's actively producing. So they're actively removing coal from an operation. And you can see over the past decade that this number has dropped significantly. And that's kind of the trend for a lot of what we're going to talk about is just the state of the industry and its basic decline. Our inspectors have to meet inspection frequency, and on active mine site, this is any job where they're actively removing coal or actively reclaiming, there's equipment on site, they're actively doing something. They require 1 complete, which is where everything on the job is looked at, and 2 partial inspections per calendar quarter. And a partial would be perhaps the inspector's just going out to look at the ponds that time, and he's not looking at backfilling and grading or something. But inactive mine sites require only 1 complete inspection per quarter. And then you're going to have additional inspections. So if there's a citizen complaint or there's a violation going on with that permit, that inspector is going to be out there more frequently. So on your watershed projects, you may have a surface job that seems like it's been open for a long time and nothing's going on up there. But be aware, going out there and visiting, they just may otherwise kind of have their hands tied. And we'll talk about that in a moment. The number of inspections we perform per year compared to the number that's technically required by these parameters I just spoke of, that's called inspection frequency. So of course our goal is 100%. Last year it was 99.5%, and we conducted over 17,000 related inspections. So we figured that was pretty good. Our tools to ensure compliance involve preventive enforcement, notices of non-compliance, and cessation orders. So I'll explain each of those. And then as the coal industry continues to decline, what we're seeing is more bankrupt entities. So currently about 25 to 30% of our permits are in some stage of bankruptcy. So again, you may have a job out there that looks like nothing's going on. It could be we're continuing to pursue reclamation through bankruptcy court. And this is a long legal process, and we just haven't dealt with it on this scale before in the state of Kentucky. And so we're all learning new things. All right, so a notice of non-compliance is basically, it's a violation. A violation would be written on a specific issue. We call those performance standards. So it might be like sediment control, an off-permit disturbance. So that'd be like a landslide or something. One notice of non-compliance can contain multiple performance standards if the multiple issues that day. And that non-compliance is going to describe the violation, the remedial measures required, and a time frame for that remediation. So we can extend those time frames giving certain very limited circumstances. So if they want to extend it beyond 90 days to go out there and fix a problem, it perhaps may be that they had a landslide. They went ahead and remediated the landslide, but they have to add that area to their permit boundary. So perhaps they're waiting on a permit action. It could be pending valid judicial orders, a labor strike, or just unfavorable weather. Sometimes, like if we have an extended wet spell, getting heavy equipment out there is just going to make things worse. So we allow them to wait on that. We also have cessation orders. A cessation order will require the permittee to immediately stop all mining activities. We have imminent danger cessation orders and failure to abate. So an imminent danger is when there's an imminent danger to the health and safety of the public. So like this picture here is a mine blowout. That would qualify as an imminent danger situation. Failure to abate may just be that they haven't turned in their quarterly water sampling. They haven't abated the noncompliance associated with that. They've passed all their time frames, so they're going to get one of these. We'll also order or issue a cessation order for wildcat mining, so that's mining without a valid permit. Right, this graph is representing our enforcement metrics over the past couple of years. That dashed line is the number of inspectable units we have. And you can see that yellow is failure to abate cessation orders. The red is imminent danger cessation orders. So over the past year, these numbers have jumped significantly. So while our number of permits are declining, our enforcement efforts are increasing. Beyond these, we have monetary penalties that can be assessed. If they're having repeat violations, we'll sort in a set amount of time, issue a pattern of violation, ultimately go to a show cause order where they need to demonstrate why their permit shouldn't be revoked or suspended. Permit revocation is the final course we may take, and this would ultimately bar them from mining in the state of Kentucky. They cannot hold a mining permit, and the bond money may end up being forfeited, or the surety company would step in, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. So each permit issued has a reclamation bond associated with it. And as the permittee works towards their approved post-mining land use, whether it's pasture land or fish and wildlife habitat, that bond money is returned in phases. We have 3 phases. The first phase is basically, they've got say if it's a surface job, they've got that permit area backfilled, it's regraded, they got the topsoil back, and all drainage control in place. Phase 2 is when they've got it revegetated, and they may ultimately be able to remove their sediment ponds because you're not contributing that sediment load to the area anymore. And then phase 3 is that everything's going as it should, vegetation's established, and the liability period has expired. So at phase 3 is when they are totally released from our jurisdiction. So when a bond is forfeited, what am I trying to say here? When a bond is forfeited, consistent with KRS 350-130, the entire amount of the bond or for the increment shall be forfeited. So you could have a permit and there's one bond for all of it, or they may have incrementally bonded it where certain acreages are kind of their own boundary and they have their own bond associated with that chunk of land. So it might just be that chunk that's forfeited. Once it's forfeited, DMRE collects that money and it's transferred from DMRE to the Kentucky Reclamation Guarantee Fund. And then they're the ones who will end up dispersing it to Division of Abandoned Mine Lands, as Lucas just talked about earlier. In some cases, the surety may step in. So instead of losing that bond money, the surety company will contract it out and actually go out there and reclaim it. The major causes we see for this happening is that they can't rectify the enforcement actions. They didn't pay the fees due to KRGF. It may be a voluntary forfeiture due to bankruptcy or an administrative forfeiture that we've initiated. All right, so beyond this, DMRE also reviews certifications. So any of the large facilities or small facilities, even that you'd see on a permit, such as a sediment pond or a hollow fill or a slurry impoundment, all these things are highly engineered and designed, and they will submit certifications stamped by the engineer for each stage of these constructions and throughout the life of that, whatever that facility is. And DMRE reviews those to ensure they're in compliance with what's approved in the permit. We also review quarterly surface and groundwater sampling results. So underground and surface mine is going to have surface and groundwater points associated with it. And that's to help monitor for impacts outside the permit area. They will submit these water sampling results each quarter, and we review those. We work closely with the Kentucky Division of Water. DMRE basically conducts the field enforcement activities regarding the KPDS permits. You're going to have a KPDS permit for any point source discharge on a mine operation. So it could be like the outlet of a sediment pond, a wet seal on an underground mine that's discharging water. And typical parameters we see on these permits that they're documenting is flow, total suspended solids, total iron, total manganese, pH, specific conductivity, sulfate, and precipitation. So if that permittee is having issues maintaining compliance with their KPDS permit, and they are having to chemically treat the water, as you see here in this picture, or passively treat even, we're going to evaluate them for placement on the long-term treatment list. The different types of treatment were kind of discussed in Module 4, so I'm not going to go into that. Whenever we do add someone to the LTT list, we communicate with a Division of Mine Permits, and they'll initiate a request for additional bond money from the permittee. So DMP is going to look at the cost of that chemical, the cost to set up whatever the treatment system is, labor involved, sampling costs, pretty much anything it's going to take for an entire calendar year to run this site. And then they're going to multiply that by a factor of 25, and that is your LTT bond associated with that job. What might be relevant for you guys is that just remember, one of these sites cannot be removed from the LTT list until the water quality issues are resolved. We consider that when they have compliant water for 12 months without treatment. We have LTT sites that are still bonded, they're still treating for decades now. So everything else on that job's been reclaimed and put back, and it's all vegetated. We still have an LTT problem, so that pond is still there, and they are not allowed to get a release on that pond until the water issues are cleared up. Complaints. So citizen complaints are a big part of our program. We will inspect and respond to citizen complaints regarding any problems or concerns potentially related to a permit or a non-permanent area under jurisdiction. That'll be a permanent area, but we'll look and see if there's something active or an idle mine that could be causing the issue. We refer to these as citizen requests for inspections, or CRIs. We have mandated timeframes for response to these, and they often involve things like seeps, or water coming from an underground mine affecting someone's yard, landslides, subsidence, water quantity or quality issues with a water well. The image you see here is an investigation we conducted at a borehole going into an underground mine. We were able to use our downhole well camera to view inside this mine and establish that it was flooded. You're seeing a big rock that fell from the roof of the mine there. We noticed that these complaints strongly correlate with weather. AML often sees the same thing on their citizen complaints. See, this graph here is from winter 2015 to current. The winter of 2015 was terrible. We had a lot of precipitation, and you can see that our complaints jumped up. It's like that pretty much every spring. But overall, the number of CRIs we receive are trending down with the industry. However, the number we get now tend to be much more complex. As with our non-compliances, say if we conduct an investigation, we find this water in a person's yard is coming from a permitted area, and we write a violation. The permittee can dispute that violation. There's appeal language on it. And this would take it into a court process, which can take a long time, but requires our investigators to be expert witnesses on behalf of the cabinet. So we have several geologists and hydrologists working for us that investigate these issues. So if you have a watershed in it and there's a job that's causing you concern or you'd like it looked into, you can file a citizen's request for inspection by contacting your regional office, explain the nature and location of the issue. If you prefer to remain anonymous, you can state this and you'll be anonymous in our system. However, if you're anonymous, you won't receive a final response letter. Each CRI letter from our division, and it lets you know the conclusion of that investigation. So if there was a non-compliance that ended up being issued, you would be notified of that in the letter. And that kind of concludes coal. I'll just briefly talk about our non-coal program. We permit and regulate all non-coal mining in the state. So that includes your limestone, sand, gravel, fluorspar in Western Kentucky, shale, any surface effects of dredging river sand and gravel, and any other vein minerals. As of this past fiscal year, we had 223 active non-coal permits in Kentucky, totaling over 40,000 acres, and we conducted over 1,300 inspections on these jobs. Here's a distribution of those permits across the state, so they are pretty evenly distributed. It's not, just eastern and western like you see with the coal. All right, and explosives and blasting. This doesn't affect you all too much, but just beware, it's something else we do. We license blasters, respond to blasting complaints, drain, test, issue permits to purchase, control the manufacture, transportation, storage, distribution, and eventual use of the explosives. So this is not just for mining. We do blasting for everything, including building demolition and road construction. All right, so that includes what DMRE does. I'm going to move on to some online resources you guys might find useful. Most of our online resources are maintained by the GIS support section in the Division of Mine Permits. So they're the ones scanning and georeferencing these maps. What you're seeing here is a detailed map showing underground works, and you're seeing like the room and pillar method here. These are available. You can look up any of these that you want, essentially. These are maintained for the Department of Revenue for tax purposes. So to access these and other resources, you're going to want to go to the EEC website. There's a link here to the mining section of the website. The tools we're going to talk about is the Surface Mining Information System, or we call it SMIS. We got the Surface Mining Interactive Viewer and the Kentucky Mine Mapping Information System and Cumulative Hydrologic Impact Assessments. So here's the EEC website. You're going to click on Natural Resources, then go down to Mining. And then you'll see the programs available here on the right. These are all links. So we'll start with the Surface Mining Interactive Viewer. When you click on it, it's going to bring you to something that's kind of like Google Maps setup. You can just scroll in to the watershed you're looking at, and you'll see here, these are all either mined out coal seams or permit boundaries. So if you see one, like I think this says Middle Fork Creek, and I want to click on that permit, you just click on it and it'll bring up a window letting you know the permittee's name, in this case, Kentucky Fuel Corporation, give you a permit number, the acreage associated with it, and so on. Once you have that permit number, you could use our SMIS program. So again, you go back to the website, click the link. It's going to let you know here what requirements for your browser and such that you need to use the program. You hit enter SMIS, you go to, it's a drop-down menu. This is a new system for us. We had an ancient program that was difficult to use. Now it's online based and it's so much easier. So you just click on SMIS, it'll drop down menu to permits, select permits again, and you can throw in the permit number. And it's going to bring up all this information regarding the permit. So acreage, the current status, when actions were issued on the permit, and so forth. All right, another tool is the Kentucky Mine Mapping Information System. So if you click on that link, again, it's going to bring up this map format. You can zoom into your area of concern. If you're familiar with ArcMap or ArcGIS, it works a lot like that. It's got layers you can turn on and off. You can look at LiDAR on this. It's pretty nice. So say I want to zoom in on this watershed here in Knott County. All these polygons you're seeing are associated, their scan footprint, basically, of where we have a map. So you could click on the footprint of the map and scroll down in the little window that pops up, and you can go down to map search and click more info. And that'll bring you to the mind map search in KMMIS. And you'll see down here at the red oval, you can look at mind maps or the mind report associated with this. You'll see it's giving you a permit number. It may not be the most recent permit number associated with that job. Permits can transfer and they're assigned a new number. But it'll have a state file number too, and that is the one associated with coal removal and tax ID purposes. So say you want to view the mind map, you click on that, it'll bring up each mind map that's been submitted. This is an older job, it's from 1987. You click view mind map, view map images, and you're going to see different options for download. So it'd be a JPEG, a TIFF, or a TFW. So you can click download file, and then you have the map. You can see here, it's like a old road and a small surface job associated with this one. You can also get into the same system from the main natural resources page. It's called here, for some reason, it's identified by a different name, Kentucky Underground Mine Mapping Information System. It's the same program. When you click here, it'll take you to its main page, and you'll see that there's a drop-down menu for maps. So you can go back to that mind map search we were looking at earlier, or you have other options that might be useful resources for you. All right, this is the cumulative hydrologic impact assessments. These are put together and maintained by the Division of Mine Permits. I have a link here. You could click on this and it'll directly take you to the page. We call this the CHIA program. CHIA looks at HUC 12 watersheds. So for a lot of the watersheds in the coal fields, we've got surface water quality, benthics, groundwater, any water quality violations, KPDS information, mine history information, pending applications. There's a lot of data here, and it is just available to the general public. So if you click that link, it's going to take you to the CHIA page, and you'll see on the right-hand side that there are several options. For example, you click on the CHIA data packages, and it'll bring up a listing of all the HUC 12 watersheds available. So say you want to look at the Blackberry Creek Tug Fork watershed, click on that, and it's going to download you an Excel spreadsheet of a lot of water quality data. So you see this is going back to 2015. There's a lat long there for the location of the site, and you'll see there's a lot of parameters available. So this might be useful for you guys on a project. And then finally, we have DocTree. You can't access this from your home computer. You're gonna have to go either to the central office or a regional office, and you can access DocTree. But this is where all of our like permitting info, violation info, any like the big literature documents are stored here. So say you needed to review pond designs, you could access those through DocTree at an office, or you could request it via Open Records. So here's the Open Records information and links on this page. And that's all I've got. So I'm happy to answer any questions.